Let me show you how I made my steampunk arrow. First I handmade by eye one fletch. This gave me a pattern to use as the arrow requires 3 fletches. Laying down the pattern onto some brass sheet, I marked round it with a permanent marker. Once I had the pattern transferred, I moved on to cutting away some of the excess with a junior hacksaw. This eventually revealed the basic fletch shape that I was going for. Clamping the brass into the vise, I moved on to creating the cog teeth effect on the outer edge of the brass. I used a Dremel with a simple cutting wheel attachment and carefully cut down to the line made by the pattern. This required a steady hand. Using some coarse sandpaper, I took off the rough edges of the cog teeth. Clamping the fletch down, I started drilling the holes, starting with a small drill bit and then moving on to a larger one for the bigger holes. The oval section was a little more fiddly. I used the edge of the smaller drill bit with my Dremel to create the desired shape. Once all the drilling had been done, I moved on to filing down the raised areas. I could then clamp the fletch and really concentrate on smoothing out the fletch, using a cabinet scraper and then onto sandpaper. Eventually, after lots of sanding with various grades of sandpaper, I ended up with 3 matching fletches. The nock, the bit that clips onto the string, is normally made of plastic. I carved one out of an old brass bolt and cut a deep slot into it. After a bit of polish, it was ready to glue into the end of the wooden shaft. I drilled a suitable hole into the top and set the nock in. As you can see, the wood is larger than the nock, so I pared down the wood to meet the nock and matched the flat sides of the nock by changing the round shaft into a tapered flat surface. Using a fletching jig, I began working out where I would need to place the fletches on the shaft. The jig allows me to accurately space out the 3 fletchings. Using the clamp to hold it in place, I was able to mark around in pen where it should go. Once all 3 were marked, I started making the groove for the fletch that would eventually be glued into. Using a small cone-shaped bit in the Dremel, I was able to cut out a small rebate into the wood and tidy it up with a small craft chisel and place the fletch in to check it was fitting. Eventually I had 3 slots in the shaft. Before gluing them in place, I decided to paint the shaft. I used a copper coloured enamel type paint. Once the paint was dry, it was time to glue in the fletches. I used a 2-part epoxy along the edge of the brass and then inserted it into the slot. The jig held the shaft steady while the glue set. Once all 3 had been glued on, it was time to fix the arrowhead to the other end. I found a brass head that had been sitting around the workshop for years. It seemed to be appropriate. Starting off with the blade to remove the lion's share of the wood, I then made a good fit of the head with a file and used 2-part epoxy to glue it in place. Then it was pretty much complete. What do you think? Well, there you go, I finally finished it. I hope you enjoyed my mini tutorial of making my Steampunk Arrow. It's the first one I've ever done, so yeah, it was quite challenging. If you want to see more videos on bow making and arrow making, then check out all the videos that we've got up here. And if you'd like to subscribe, then please do, you'd really help us out. And if you want to give us a thumbs up, a like, and perhaps even comment in the comment section below what you'd like to see me do next, then please do. Thanks for watching.